The Shire is quiet. The lanterns are glowing. Welcome back to the Hobbit's hideout, where stories grow like leaves on the party tree. Hello guys. Today, we venture deep beneath the misty mountains, where stone whispers ancient secrets and darkness holds unexpected treasures. Before we wander the deep places together, let's pause, take a long, deep breath, and let the weight of your day melt away like morning mist on the party tree. You've earned this quiet moment just for you. Imagine the cool stone beneath your fingertips, the steady rhythm of your breathing echoing in vast chambers. If any part of this tale makes you smile or brings you a sense of wonder, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Now, let me paint the scene for you. The sound of pickaxes has long since faded into memory. The great halls of Moria have settled into their evening stillness, lanterns casting warm pools of amber light across carved stone columns that stretch into shadows above. Tonight, something different stirs in the deep places. A story of discovery, of finding light in the darkest corners, and of paths that lead not where we expect, but exactly where we need to go. Chapter 1. The last shift, you adjust the leather strap of your mining helmet, feeling the familiar weight of the oil lamp swinging gently as you walk. The corridors of Moria have become as familiar to you as the halls of your family's home in the upper levels. 3 years you've worked these restored passages, part of the great reclamation that has slowly, carefully, brought life back to the ancient dwarven realm. Your boots make a steady rhythm against the worn stone floor, joining the distant sounds of your fellow miners preparing for the day's end. The air carries the scent of burning lamp oil, mixed with the clean mineral smell of fresh-cut stone. Today's shift has been a good one. Your team has mapped another section of the eastern galleries, discovering a promising vein of silver that runs deeper than the old record suggested. Thoric, calls Balin the Younger from behind you, his voice echoing pleasantly off the vaulted ceiling. Wait for old bones, would you? You slow your pace, turning to see your mentor approaching with his characteristic careful gait. Balin has been working these mines longer than anyone, and his knowledge of Moria's hidden passages is legendary among the current generation of miners. His white beard, streaked with the honest dust of good work, catches the lamplight as he draws near. The eastern survey is nearly complete, you tell him as he falls into step beside you. Just one more gallery to map, and we can recommend the full excavation to the Mine Council. Balin nods approvingly, his weathered hands adjusting his own lamp. Good work, lad. Your grandfather would be proud. He always said the eastern reaches held promise. He pauses, running a finger along a carved inscription on the wall. These old stones remember everything, you know. Every strike of hammer, every song sung in the darkness. They're patient teachers, if you listen. The corridor opens into one of the restored gathering chambers, where several other mining teams are concluding their own shifts. The warm glow of multiple lanterns creates a cozy atmosphere, and you can hear fragments of conversation mixing with the occasional laugh. Someone is humming an old working song, the melody threading through the space like a comfortable embrace. You and Balin make your way toward the equipment alcoves, where you'll store your tools before heading to the upper levels and the evening meal. But as you pass the entrance to the eastern gallery, the very section you've been mapping, something catches your attention. A sound, barely audible beneath the ambient noise of the gathering chamber. Do you hear that? You ask Balin, pausing beside the archway. The older dwarf stops, tilting his head to listen. There it is, again a faint grinding, like stone settling under weight. It's not unusual in Moria. The ancient mountain is always adjusting, always finding new equilibrium. But something about this sound seems different, more purposeful. Probably just the deep chambers adjusting to the day's work, Balin says, but his brow furrows slightly. Though I'll admit it's an odd time for, the sound grows louder, more distinct. Not the slow settling of stone, but something more immediate. A rumbling that seems to come from multiple directions at once. That's not settling, You realize, even as understanding dawns with cold clarity. The rumbling intensifies, and dust begins to fall from the ceiling. Around the gathering chamber, conversations stop as other miners look up with growing concern. The sound is coming from the eastern gallery, your gallery, but also from passages beyond it, as if a chain reaction is spreading through the mountain's depths. Balian's eyes widen with decades of experience. "Everyone out!" he shouts, his voice carrying the authority of years in dangerous places. Main passages now. But even as the words leave his mouth, you both know it may be too late. The rumbling has become a roar, and the sound of falling stone echoes from multiple directions. The careful restoration work, the gradual reopening of Moria's passages, all of it suddenly seems fragile against the mountain's ancient power. The floor trembles beneath your feet as you and Balin move toward what should be the main exit passage. But as you reach the archway, the roar becomes deafening, and dust fills the air like a thick fog. Through the chaos, you glimpse the terrible truth. Massive stones, each the size of a house, tumbling into the passage ahead. The mountain has reclaimed its own. When the dust finally settles and the echoes fade, you find yourself standing in a chamber that has become an island in the dark. The familiar passages you've walked for 3 years are sealed, behind walls of rubble that no amount of digging could quickly clear. The lamplight reveals 5 other miners who are caught in the same trap Balin, of course, and 4 younger dwarves you know by name and friendship. Ori the scribe sits against a pillar, methodically checking his writing materials with the calm precision that makes him invaluable for record keeping. The twins, Fili and Kili, named for ancient heroes, but known for their modern skill with stone-cutting tools, are already examining the blocked passages with professional interest rather than panic. And there's Dane, barely past his coming-of-age ceremony, but steady and reliable as the bedrock itself. "Well then," Balin says into the settling silence, his voice carrying the same measured tone he might use to discuss the weather. "It seems the mountain has decided to give us an extended tour of the deep places." You look around the chamber with new eyes, seeing it not as a temporary workplace, but as a space you may inhabit for some time. The stone walls rise into darkness above, carved with the intricate patterns that mark this as one of the formal reception halls of old Moria. Your lamplight reveals the beginning of several passages leading deeper into the mountain passages that were sealed during the restoration for safety reasons, but which might now offer the only hope of finding another way to the surface. The question, you say, surprised by the steadiness of your own voice, is whether we wait for rescue or begin exploring our options. Balian's eyes twinkle with something that might be anticipation rather than worry. "Lad, in 60 years of mining, I've learned that the mountain rarely gives you problems without also giving you solutions. They're just not always where you expect to find them. And so begins your unexpected journey into the deep places of Moria, where the darkness holds wonders that no map has recorded, and where the path home leads, through chambers that have waited centuries for visitors to appreciate their quiet beauty." Chapter 2. Echoes in the Dark. The first hours pass in methodical exploration of your immediate surroundings. Working together with the practiced efficiency of experienced miners, your small group takes inventory of resources and options. 6 lamps with perhaps 2 days of oil between them. A collection of mining tools that includes several sturdy picks, measuring ropes, and Ori's comprehensive note-taking supplies. Most importantly, you have water. A natural spring feeds a small pool in one corner of the chamber, its gentle bubbling adding a soothing rhythm to your deliberations. "The water flows in from somewhere," Dane observes, kneeling beside the spring with the enthusiasm of youth. "And water always knows the way down, which means it might know the way out too." You nod, remembering Balian's lessons about reading the mountain's natural systems. Every drop of water that enters Moria must eventually find its way to the surface, following paths carved by centuries of patient flow. Following the water source might lead to passages that connect with the outer world. But first, there are the sealed passages to consider. 3 archways lead deeper into the mountain, each blocked by carefully fitted stones that mark them as deliberately closed, rather than naturally collapsed. The craftsmanship is typical of dwarven safety measures, thorough and intended to last, but not impossible to breach with proper tools and patience. These seals are from the early restoration, Balin explains, running his hands over the precisely fitted stones. We closed them because the passages beyond hadn't been fully surveyed for stability. But the stonework itself is sound classic dwarven engineering. Fili and Kili, working together with the wordless coordination of twins, have already begun the careful process of loosening the first seal. They work not with the urgency of panic, but with the methodical care of craftsmen who understand that haste in stonework leads to accidents. This one's definitely been designed for reopening, Kelly reports, indicating the subtle tool marks that show where leverage should be applied. Whoever sealed it left instructions in the stonework itself. As the first stones come loose, a current of cooler air flows through the gap, not the stale breath of a dead end, but the fresh movement that indicates open space beyond. Your lamplight penetrates perhaps 20 feet into a corridor that slopes gently downward, its walls carved with the same careful attention to detail that marks all of Moria's formal passages. Listen, Ori says, holding up one hand for silence. You all pause in your work, straining to hear whatever has caught the scribe's attention. At first, there's only the familiar sound of dripping water and the whisper of air currents. But gradually, you become aware of something else. A sound so faint it might be imagination, yet so distinctly musical that it can't be dismissed. It's singing, not the voices of rescue teams calling from the blocked passages above, but something far more distant and ethereal. The melody seems to come from deep within the mountain, echoing through stone corridors with a quality that makes it impossible to determine its direction or distance. Elvish, Balin murmurs, his voice filled with wonder rather than concern, though I haven't heard the like for many years. The deep places of Moria have always been touched by older magics. The singing fades as you listen, leaving you to wonder if you heard it at all. But the memory of those distant notes adds a new dimension to your situation. You are not simply trapped in forgotten tunnels. You've been given access to parts of Moria that few living beings have experienced. The mountain, it seems, has secrets to share. With the first passage partially opened, you make the decision to explore while maintaining your base camp in the chamber with the spring. Balin will remain with the supplies and continue monitoring the main passages for any sign of rescue teams. The rest of you will venture into the unsealed corridor, following proper mining protocols for exploring unknown spaces. The passage beyond leads steadily downward, its walls decorated with carved panels that tell stories in the ancient dwarven tradition. Your lamplight reveals scenes of mining and craftsmanship, but also images of discovery dwarves finding gems and precious metals. Yes, but also caverns of natural beauty and underground rivers that flow like ribbons of light through the darkness. These carvings are older than the restoration, you observe, tracing the outline of a particularly intricate scene. They're from the original settlement when Moria was first being explored. The twins examine another panel, their mining expertise helping them interpret the symbolic representations of geological features. This one shows water, Fili says, indicating a series of flowing lines. A lot of water, maybe an underground lake? The passage continues to descend, branching occasionally into side corridors that you mark for future exploration. The air remains fresh, carrying hints of moisture and the clean scent of water over stone. Your footsteps echo pleasantly in the carved space, creating a rhythm that seems to harmonize with the distant sound of flowing water. After perhaps an hour of walking, the passage opens into a wider space, not a vast chamber, but a comfortable gallery with several archways leading to other passages. Most importantly, the sound of water is stronger here, coming from one of the side passages with a clarity that suggests a significant flow nearby. We should mark our path carefully, Ori suggests, already preparing his writing materials. These passages could be more complex than they appear. As he begins sketching a map of your route, you find yourself drawn to one of the archways where the water sound is strongest. The passage beyond is different from the formal corridors you've been following, more natural, as if it follows the mountain's own preferences rather than dwarven engineering. Peering into this passage, your lamplight reveals something extraordinary. The walls are decorated not with carved panels, but with natural crystal formations that catch and reflect your light in subtle, shifting patterns. The crystals are small, no larger than your thumb, but they create a gentle luminescence that extends your lamp's reach significantly. Balin should see this, you decide, but as you turn to head back, you hear it again, the distant singing, clearer now, and definitely coming from the direction of the crystal passage. The melody is hauntingly beautiful, neither sad nor joyful, but something in between. It speaks of deep time and patient waiting, of beauty that exists without witness and stories that unfold in silence. As you listen, you realize that the singer, if there is a singer, is not calling for help or companionship, but simply sharing something beautiful with the darkness. For the first time since the collapse, you feel not trapped, but privileged. The mountain has opened a door that few have ever seen, and beyond that door lie wonders that exist simply for their own sake. Your path home may not be the one you expected, but it's beginning to feel like a journey worth taking. When you return to share your discoveries with the others, you find them equally fascinated by their own explorations. The passages of deep Moria are revealing themselves to be not a maze to be escaped, but a treasure house to be appreciated. And somewhere in the crystal-lined corridors ahead, water sings its ancient song of patience and flow, promising to guide you toward whatever destination the mountain has chosen for your journey. Chapter 3. Water that whispers, the crystal passage beckons with its gentle luminescence, and your small group decides to follow the sound of flowing water deeper into the mountain's heart. The natural tunnel winds and curves with organic grace, its walls studded with countless small crystals that create a constellation of reflected light around your moving lamps. It's like walking through a jeweler's dream, Dane whispers, his young voice filled with appropriate awe. The crystals respond to your lamplight with subtle variations in color-pale blues and soft greens that seem to pulse gently with their own inner rhythm. The twins, ever practical, note the geological significance of the formations. These crystals form in the presence of specific minerals and long-term water flow, Killy explains. This passage has been stable for centuries, maybe longer. As you progress, the sound of water grows stronger and more complex. What began as a simple flowing sound has developed layers, the gentle splash of droplets falling into pools, the whisper of current over smooth stones, and beneath it all, a deeper resonance that suggests a large body of water ahead. The passage makes a final turn and opens into a chamber that takes your breath away. Your lamplight reveals an underground lake that stretches beyond the reach of illumination, its surface so still it might be polished obsidian. The water reflects your lights with perfect clarity, creating the illusion that you're standing at the edge of a starfield rather than a subterranean pool. By my beard, Feli breathes, and for once his usual humor is replaced by genuine wonder. The lake chamber is perhaps 50 feet across where you stand, but it extends into darkness in both directions, following what appears to be a natural fault in the mountain. The ceiling rises to twice the height of the passages you've been following, and from various points along its span, thin streams of water descend like silver threads, each adding its small contribution to the pool below. But it's not just the size of the lake that captures your attention. It is the quality of the space itself. The chamber has an almost sacred feel, as if you've entered a natural cathedral dedicated to the patient work of water and time. The gentle sounds of dripping and flowing create a meditative atmosphere that seems to slow your heartbeat and deepen your breathing. Look at the water, Ori says, kneeling carefully at the lake's edge. It's incredibly clear. He's right. The water is so transparent that your lamplight penetrates deep beneath the surface, revealing a bottom of smooth, rounded stones. Small fish pail and graceful move in lazy schools through the illuminated depths, apparently thriving in this hidden ecosystem. Dane, ever curious, cups some water in his paw and tastes it carefully. Fresh and clean, he reports. Better than the spring water in our chamber. You realize that this lake represents more than just a beautiful discovery. It's a potential lifeline. The water's clarity and the presence of healthy fish indicate that it's connected to clean sources, possibly surface streams that have found their way deep into the mountain. More importantly, water this pure and flowing must have outlets somewhere. As you explore the chamber's perimeter, you discover several passages that connect to the lake at different points. Some are at water level, suggesting they might be flooded during periods of higher flow. Others are elevated, carved into the chamber walls at various heights, like balconies overlooking the water. From one of these elevated passages comes a sound that makes you pause in wonder. It's the singing you heard earlier, but clearer now, and definitely closer. The melody drifts across the water with ethereal beauty, echoing off the chamber walls in harmonies that seem almost planned. There's someone else down here, Killy says, but his tone suggests fascination rather than alarm. Alain's voice reaches you from the passage entrance, where he's finally joined your exploration. Not someone, he says, approaching with his careful, measured steps. Something. These deep places have their own music, lad. Water and stone and air, all working together to create sounds that can seem almost like voices. But as you listen more carefully, you begin to distinguish individual elements within the overall symphony. There's the musical dripping of water into the lake, the gentle whisper of air currents through the various passages, and the subtle resonance of your own voices reflecting off the chamber walls. The combination creates patterns that rise and fall like conscious melody, yet emerge from purely natural processes. It's the chamber itself, you realize with growing wonder. The shape of the space, the water, the air currents, they're all working together to create music. Ori, ever the documentarian, begins sketching not just the chamber's layout, but also notes about the acoustic properties. This is extraordinary, he murmurs as he works. A natural concert hall, designed by millennia of patient water flow. You find yourself drawn to one of the elevated passages that offers the best acoustic perspective on the chamber's music. From this vantage point, you can see how the various water streams create different tonal qualities based on their length and the shape of the pools they feed. The entire space is a vast, slow-moving musical instrument played by the mountain itself. As you settle into a comfortable position to listen, the day's tensions begin to drain away. The fear of being trapped gives way to appreciation for being granted access to something genuinely magical. The mountain, it seems, doesn't just contain practical resources like silver and iron. It also harbors spaces of pure beauty that exist for their own sake. The twins join you on the natural balcony, followed by Dane and Ori. Even Balin, despite his age and the long walk, makes the climb to share in this moment of discovery. Together, you sit in companionable silence, listening to the chamber's endless song and watching the play of lamplight on the impossibly clear water. You know, Balin says eventually, his voice soft with contentment, in all my years in Moria, I never imagined spaces like this existed. We've been so focused on the practical passages that we never explored the mountain's artistic side. The lake chamber becomes your second base camp, a place to rest and reflect while planning your continued exploration. The fresh water and peaceful atmosphere make it ideal for longer stays, and the multiple passages offer various options for finding your way to the surface. But more than that, the chamber serves as a reminder that your situation, while challenging, has opened doors to experiences that few will ever share. The mountain's music plays on as you rest, a gentle lullaby that speaks of deep time and patient beauty, of water that finds its way through darkness toward distant light. And in that music, you begin to hear not just the voice of stone and water, but the promise that every flow, no matter how deep its path, eventually finds its way home. Chapter 4. The Chambers of Memory from the Lake Chamber. 3 passages lead deeper into the mountain's heart, each following the natural flow of water through different geological layers. After consulting Ori's growing map and considering the subtle air currents that suggest connections to the surface, your group chooses the middle passage 1 that slopes gradually upward while maintaining the clear, fresh air that indicates healthy circulation. This passage is different from both the formal dwarven corridors and the natural crystal tunnel. The walls show evidence of ancient work, but not the careful finish of the restored areas above. Instead, you see the marks of exploratory mining test holes, sampled chambers, and the kind of rough-hewn spaces that indicate dwarves working to understand what the mountain contained before committing to major excavations. These are the original survey chambers, Balin explains, running his weathered hands over tool marks that are centuries old. When the first dwarven explorers came to Moria, they didn't just dig straight down. They followed the mountain's natural hints, testing and exploring before beginning the great works. Your lamplight reveals side chambers that branch off the main passage, each one a small laboratory where ancient miners studied the mountain's offerings. Some contain samples of different ores, carefully arranged and labeled with runes that Ori can partially translate. Others show evidence of water testing, with small pools and channels carved to direct flow for observation. They were scientists as much as miners, you observe, examining a chamber where different types of stone have been sorted and compared, learning the mountain's language before they tried to speak it themselves. The passage continues to rise gradually, following what appears to be a natural shelf in the mountain structure. The air grows noticeably fresher as you climb, carrying hints of something that makes you pause and inhale deeply. Do you smell that? Dane asks, his young nose more sensitive than the rest. You do smell it, not the clean mineral scent of deep stone, but something organic and surprisingly pleasant. It's earthy, but not musty, with undertones that suggest growing things rather than decay. The passage curves around a natural pillar of stone and opens into a chamber that defies every expectation. You've formed about the deep places of Moria. Your lamplight reveals not bare stone walls, but surfaces covered with a soft, pale growth that seems to phosphoresce gently in response to your illumination. Moss, Feely says with wonder, approaching one of the glowing patches, but not like any moss I've seen on the surface. The chamber is perhaps 30 feet across, with a ceiling that rises into shadows above. Every surface that can support growth is covered with the pale, luminescent moss, creating a gentle glow that extends your lamplight significantly. The effect is both beautiful and practical, like having dozens of small candles distributed throughout the space. But the moss is not the chamber's only wonder. As your eyes adjust to the enhanced illumination, you begin to make out other features that speak of long-term habitation. There are carved benches positioned around the chamber's perimeter, work surfaces carved from the living rock, and what appear to be storage alcoves built into the walls. This was a workshop, Ori determines, examining the carved surfaces with his scholar's eye. But not for mining. Look at these tool marks, they're for delicate work. Carving, maybe, or jewelry making. You approach one of the work surfaces and discover it's not empty. Scattered across its surface are tiny fragments of crystal and metal, the remnants of some ancient craftsman's work. But more intriguingly, there are finished pieces as well, small ornaments of surpassing beauty that seem to capture and hold your lamplight like tiny stars. They're still here, Killy breathes, carefully lifting one of the ornaments. After all these centuries, the work remains. The ornament is a small pendant carved from a crystal that shifts color as it moves. The craftsmanship is exquisite, showing a level of skill that speaks of years of dedicated work. As Killy holds it up to his lamp, the pendant seems to glow with its own inner light, casting subtle patterns on the moss-covered walls. Balin examines the workspace with growing excitement. This isn't just a workshop, he realizes. It's a master craftsman's studio. Someone came here specifically to work in isolation, to create beauty without distraction. The chamber contains other evidence of long-term occupancy. In one alcove, you discover a collection of books, not the practical manuals you might expect, but volumes of poetry and philosophy, their pages preserved by the chamber's unique atmosphere. Another alcove contains personal items, a cloak of fine fabric, eating utensils carved from horn, and a small harp strung with silver wire. Whoever worked here wasn't hiding, you observe, examining the comfortable furnishings. They chose this place deliberately. They wanted to be surrounded by beauty while they created it. The luminescent moss itself seems to respond to your presence, glowing more brightly as you move through the chamber. The effect is not dramatic, but subtle enough that you begin to notice variations in the light that correspond to your movements and conversations. It's reacting to us, Dane says, waving his hand near one of the brighter patches. The moss knows we're here. Ori, ever the researcher, begins documenting the chamber's contents with careful sketches and notes. This could be one of the most significant archaeological discoveries in Moria's recent history, he says as he works. A perfectly preserved artist's studio from the early period. As you explore further, you discover that the chamber connects to other spaces through passages barely wide enough for a single person. These tunnels, also lined with the glowing moss, lead to smaller chambers that serve specific purposes, one clearly used for storing materials. Another set up as a library, with carved shelves still holding scroll cases. In the library chamber, you make a discovery that brings tears to your eyes. On a reading stand carved from the living rock sits an open book. Its pages turn to a poem written in the flowing script of ancient Kuzdo. The words speak of finding beauty in darkness, of patient work done in solitude, and of the joy that comes from creating something purely for the love of creation itself. Read it aloud, Balin suggests, settling onto one of the stone benches. Poetry improves with sharing. Your voice echoes gently in the moss-lined chamber as you translate the ancient words into the common tongue. The poem speaks of a craftsman who chose the deep places not to hide from the world, but to be closer to the mountain's heart. In darkness, the poet suggests, the inner light shines more clearly. In silence, the soul's music becomes audible. As you read, the moss seems to pulse gently with the rhythm of the words, creating a visual accompaniment to the ancient verse. The effect is hypnotic and deeply peaceful, as if the chamber itself is participating in the poetry's meaning. When you finish reading, the chamber settles into a comfortable silence, broken only by the gentle sounds of air currents and distant water. The moss continues its subtle luminescence, creating an atmosphere of profound tranquility that seems to slow time itself. I understand now, you say, looking around the chamber with new appreciation. This isn't a place someone was trapped in. It's a place someone chose to live in. A place where they could focus on what mattered most to them. The realization brings a shift in your own perspective. You're not just trapped in Moria's depths. You've been given access to spaces that represent the mountain as soul. The practical passages above serve necessary functions, but these chambers preserve something more precious, the understanding that beauty and meaning can flourish in the most unexpected places. As your group settles in to rest and plan your next exploration, the luminescent moss provides a gentle, living light that makes the chamber feel less like a cave and more like a sanctuary. The ancient craftsman's tools and unfinished works seem to wait patiently for someone to appreciate their beauty, while the poetry on the reading stand offers wisdom that feels both ancient and immediately relevant. In this chamber of memory and light, surrounded by the evidence of creativity that persisted in darkness, you begin to understand your journey through Moria's depths is revealing not just a way out, but a way into appreciation for beauty that exists without witness, work that continues without recognition, and the deep satisfaction that comes from creating something meaningful in the quiet places of the world. Chapter 5. the Garden of Stone, beyond the craftsman's chambers. The passage continues to rise through the mountain's layers, following natural fissures that allow air and moisture to circulate from sources far above. Your enhanced understanding of Moria's hidden geography, combined with Ori's careful mapping, guides you toward what appears to be a major junction where several natural systems converge. The air grows progressively fresher as you climb, carrying scents that become increasingly complex and intriguing. Beneath the familiar mineral smell of deep stone, you detect something that makes you pause and inhale deeply. The rich, loamy scent of earth that has supported growing things for a very long time. There's soil up here, Dane observes, his mining experience helping him identify the subtle differences in air quality. Real soil, not just rock dust. The passage begins to show evidence of this change. Patches of actual earth appear in crevices between stones, supporting small growths that become more abundant as you progress. At first, these are simple mosses and lichens, similar to what you found in the craftsman's chamber. But gradually, the plant life becomes more diverse and substantial. "This is extraordinary," Cully murmurs, examining a delicate fern that grows from a crack in the wall. These plants are thriving without sunlight. They're feeding on something else entirely. The passage makes a final turn and opens into a chamber that transforms your understanding of what can exist in the deep places of the world. Your lamplight reveals a space that challenges every assumption about underground environments, a natural garden that flourishes in the heart of the mountain. The chamber is vast, easily the largest space you've encountered in your underground journey. But its size is less remarkable than its contents. Everywhere you look, plant life creates a tapestry of subtle colors and graceful forms that seem to glow with their own inner vitality. Trees grow here, not the stunted, pale growths you might expect in such a place, but genuine trees with strong trunks and spreading branches. Their leaves are not the familiar green of surface plants, but range through subtle variations of silver, pale gold, and deep purple that seem to shimmer in your lamplight. How is this possible? Feely asks, his practical mind struggling to understand what he's seeing. Balin, drawing on decades of experience with the mountain's mysteries, provides a thoughtful answer. "Water," he says simply, "and time, and the mountain's own deep warmth." This chamber sits at the intersection of several natural systems, water flows, air currents, and the thermal energy that rises from Moria's depths. As you explore the garden chamber, you begin to understand the complex ecosystem that sustains this underground paradise. Springs emerge from various points in the walls, creating small streams that wind through the chamber before disappearing into natural drains. The water carries minerals dissolved from the mountain's depths, providing nutrition for the plant life. More remarkably, you discover that some of the trees and larger plants exhibit a form of bioluminescence. Their leaves and flowers glow with a soft, steady light that provides illumination throughout the chamber. The effect is subtle but pervasive, creating an environment where oil lamps become supplementary rather than essential. It's a complete ecosystem, Ori observes, documenting the discovery with careful sketches. The plants provide light for each other, the water carries nutrients, and everything is balanced in perfect harmony. The garden is not wild and chaotic, but shows evidence of careful tending over long periods. Paths wind through the planted areas, lined with stones that have been placed with obvious intention. Clearings provide rest areas with carved stone benches, while other spaces are devoted to specific types of plants, grouped according to some organizing principle. Someone has been caring for this place, you realize, examining the neat arrangement of a particularly beautiful grove. These paths, these groupings, they're the work of a gardener. The evidence of long-term care is everywhere once you know how to look for it. Plants that would naturally compete have been separated and given optimal growing conditions. Water flows have been subtly directed to ensure even distribution throughout the chamber. Pruning and shaping show the hand of someone who understood both horticulture and aesthetics. In the center of the garden, you discover a structure that serves as both focal point and mystery. It's a small pavilion carved from the living rock, its columns and arches decorated with intricate patterns that incorporate both geometric designs and naturalistic representations of the plants that surround it. Inside the pavilion, you find evidence of the gardener's identity, or at least their interests. A collection of books focuses on botanical subjects, with detailed illustrations of plant varieties, both familiar and exotic. Tools for plant care are arranged with the same precision you found in the craftsman's workshop, each implement carefully maintained and ready for use. Most intriguingly, you discover a journal written in a script that combines formal Kuzdal with personal shorthand. The entries, which Ori works to translate, reveal the thoughts of someone who found deep satisfaction in nurturing life in unexpected places. "Listen to this," Ori says, reading from one of the journal entries. "The silver leaf responded well to the new mineral mixture. Its glow has increased by nearly half, and the root system shows healthy expansion. I believe the key is patience, allowing each plant to adapt at its own pace, rather than forcing growth through artificial means." The journal contains years of such observations, documenting the gradual development of the garden through careful experimentation and patient care. The writer clearly understood that creating life in the deep places required not just knowledge, but a willingness to work with natural systems rather than against them. As you rest in the garden pavilion, surrounded by the gentle glow of bioluminescent plants and the soft sound of flowing water, you experience a profound shift in perspective. The fear and urgency that initially drove your exploration have given way to something deeper, a recognition that Moria's depths contain not just passages to be navigated, but wisdom to be absorbed. "We're not lost," you say aloud, the realization coming with surprising clarity. "We're being taught." Thane looks up from where he has been examining a particularly fascinating flower that seems to pulse with inner light. "Taught what?" You gesture around the chamber, taking in the careful arrangement of plants, the evidence of patient cultivation, and the obvious love that has gone into creating this space. That beauty doesn't require an audience. That meaningful work continues even in isolation. That life finds a way to flourish in the most unexpected places. The garden chamber becomes your third major discovery, but unlike the lake and the craftsman's workshop, this space actively invites longer contemplation. The bioluminescent plants provide steady illumination that makes your oil lamps unnecessary for the first time since the collapse. The flowing water offers both practical refreshment and the soothing sounds that encourage deep rest. More than that, the garden demonstrates principles that apply to your own situation. Just as these plants have adapted to thrive without sunlight, drawing sustenance from sources you never would have imagined, your small group is learning to find resources and opportunities in circumstances that initially seemed only limiting. The twins discover that several of the fruit-bearing plants produce edible yields that supplement your dwindling fruit supplies. The fruits are unlike anything from the surface, subtly flavored and nourishing in ways that seem to provide energy far beyond their modest size. "It's as if they're designed for travelers," Killy observes, carefully sampling different varieties. Each type seems to address different nutritional needs. Ori continues his documentation, but his focus has shifted from mapping escape routes to recording the garden's extraordinary features. This could revolutionize our understanding of underground agriculture, he says as he sketches a tree whose leaves change color in response to the mineral content of nearby water. The applications for Moria's development could be tremendous. But it's Balin who articulates what you're all beginning to feel. "We came down here as miners and mappers," he says, settling onto one of the stone benches with obvious contentment. "But we're leaving as something different. Students, perhaps, or pilgrims." The garden chamber offers multiple passages leading to other parts of the underground complex. But for the first time since beginning your journey, the urgency to keep moving has diminished. The space itself encourages a different pace, one that allows for observation, reflection, and the kind of patient attention that the garden's creator clearly understood. As evening approaches, though time has different meaning in the deep places, your group settles into the garden's peaceful rhythm. The bioluminescent plants provide a gentle illumination that shifts subtly with some internal cycle, creating the impression of natural daylight and shadow even in the mountain's heart. You find yourself drawn to a section of the garden where flowering vines create a natural alcove. The flowers emit a fragrance that is both calming and uplifting, and their soft luminescence creates an ideal environment for contemplation. Settling into this natural sanctuary, you allow yourself to truly absorb what you've experienced over the past days. The mountain's depths have revealed themselves to be not a prison but a teacher, not a maze but a gallery of wonders that exist simply for their own sake. Each chamber has shown you different aspects of what it means to create meaning in unexpected places, whether through patient craftsmanship, careful cultivation, or the simple appreciation of beauty that requires no witness. As you rest among the glowing flowers, listening to the gentle sounds of water and growing things, you realize that your understanding of what constitutes treasure has fundamentally changed. The silver and precious metals that originally drew you to Moria seem less important now than the knowledge that such places of wonder exist in the world. The garden chamber has taught you that life is not diminished by isolation, but can be intensified by it. In the quiet places, away from the noise and urgency of surface concerns, different kinds of growth become possible. The gardener who created this space understood that some of life's most important work happens in solitude, witnessed only by stone and water, and the patient plants that respond to careful tending. Chapter 6. Songs in the Deep from the Garden Chamber. The passage that leads most clearly upward also carries the strongest currents of fresh air, a promising sign that you reapproaching connections to the surface world. But as your group prepares to continue the journey, you make a discovery that adds new dimension to your understanding of Moria's hidden depths. The sound begins as you're gathering your supplies and preparing to leave the garden. At first, it seems like another manifestation of the natural acoustics you've encountered throughout your underground journey, water flowing over stone, air moving through carved passages, the subtle settling sounds of ancient architecture. But as you pause to listen more carefully, the sound reveals itself to be something far more remarkable. Voices, definitely voices, singing in harmony from somewhere deeper in the mountain. Not the ethereal echoes you heard near the lake, but the clear, unmistakable sound of living beings creating music together. There are others down here, Feely says, his voice filled with wonder rather than alarm. Balin nods slowly, his weathered face showing a mixture of recognition and deep satisfaction. I wondered if we might encounter them, he says, the deep singers. I thought they were legend, but it seems legends have more truth than I credited. Following the sound requires a temporary detour from your upward path, but the music is so beautiful and the discovery so significant that the decision makes itself. You follow a side passage that leads toward the singing, moving carefully through corridors that show evidence of regular use without formal maintenance. The passage winds through natural formations that enhance and direct the sound, creating acoustic effects that transform the singing into something approaching orchestral complexity. Individual voices weave together in harmonies that seem to incorporate the mountain's own resonance, creating music that is both wholly dwarvish and somehow larger than any surface performance could achieve. As you round a final curve, the passage opens into a chamber that reveals the source of the music and provides yet another transformation of your understanding of what life in Moria as depths can encompass. The chamber is filled with dwarves, not just a few individuals like your own small group, but perhaps 20 or 30 dwarves of various ages, all participating in what appears to be a formal singing practice. They're arranged in careful groupings that take advantage of the chamber's acoustic properties, their voices blending in complex harmonies that fill the space with sound that seems to make the very stones resonate. The singers are not refugees or people trapped by accident. Their presence in the deep chamber is clearly intentional and long established. They wear comfortable clothing suited for extended underground residence, and their equipment and furnishings show the kind of care and permanence that indicate chosen lifestyle rather than emergency accommodation. As your group appears at the passage entrance, the singing gradually comes to a natural conclusion. The silence that follows is not awkward but expected, as if the singers are simply waiting to learn who has joined their audience. "Welcome, fellow travelers," says an elderly dwarf who appears to be the group's leader. Her voice carries the same rich tones that made the singing so compelling, and her manner suggests someone accustomed to welcoming unexpected visitors. "I am Dis, keeper of the deep songs. We don't often have audiences for our practice, but you're most welcome to listen." Balin steps forward with the natural courtesy of one dwarf greeting another in formal circumstances. "I am Balin, son of Fundin, currently serving as mining supervisor in the upper levels. We've been exploring since the eastern passages were blocked by recent rockfall." Dis nods with understanding rather than surprise. "The mountain rearranges itself from time to time," she says matter-of-factly. "Usually when it has something to show people who are ready to see. You've been finding interesting things on your journey, I expect?" The casual way she speaks of the mountain, as if it were a conscious entity making deliberate choices, strikes you as both surprising and somehow perfectly reasonable given what you've experienced. The underground chambers have indeed seemed to reveal themselves with a timing and sequence that feels almost intentional. "We've seen wonders," you admit. A lake that sings, chambers where craftsmen worked in isolation, a garden that grows without sunlight. Each place has taught us something about finding meaning in unexpected circumstances. Dis smiles with the satisfaction of someone whose expectations have been confirmed. "Then you're ready to understand what we do here," she says. "We are the keepers of the deep songs, the music that preserves the mountain's memory and carries its voice to those who know how to listen." She gestures around the chamber, and you notice for the first time that it contains elements similar to what you've seen in other specialized spaces. There are carved alcoves for storing musical instruments, comfortable seating arranged to optimize acoustic effects, and walls decorated with notation systems that combine traditional Dwarven, runic writing with symbols you don't recognize. "The deep songs are different from surface music," this explains as she leads you further into the chamber. "They're designed to work with the mountain's natural resonance, to create harmonies that include stone and water and air as active participants rather than passive environments." To demonstrate, she begins a simple melody that the other singers gradually join. But as the music develops, you realize that the chamber itself is contributing to the performance. The acoustic properties that seemed merely excellent for normal singing proved to be precisely calibrated for this specific type of musical creation. The song tells a story not through words, which are used sparingly, but through melodic themes that represent different aspects of mountain life. You hear the patient rhythm of stone formation, the flowing urgency of underground rivers, the steady pulse of deep earthwork, and woven through it all, the voices of dwarves who have learned to make their music part of the mountain's own song. "How long have you been here?" Ori asks during a pause in the demonstration, his scholar's mind clearly fascinated by the implications of what he's witnessing. "Time moves differently in the deep places," Dis replies. "Some of us have been here for decades, others for just a few years. We come when the mountain calls us, and we stay as long as our voices are needed." The concept of the mountain calling people initially seems mystical, but as you listen to more of the deep songs, you begin to understand it in practical terms. The music requires specific acoustic conditions and the kind of dedicated practice that is only possible in isolation from surface distractions. The singers haven't been trapped in Moria. They've been drawn to it by the same forces that created the garden and preserved the craftsman's workshop. The mountain accumulates memory. Dis explains as the group settles into comfortable positions for an extended session. Every tool strike, every footstep, every voice raised in joy or sorrow, all of it becomes part of the stone's experience. Our songs help organize that memory, give it structure and meaning. As if to demonstrate this principle, the singers begin a performance that clearly incorporates sounds you recognize from your own journey. There are melodic phrases that echo the water music from the lake chamber, rhythmic patterns that match the dripping in the craftsman's workshop, and harmonic structures that seem to reflect the gentle luminescence of the garden's bioluminescent plants. You're singing our story, you realize with amazement. Dis nods with evident pleasure. The mountain has been watching your journey, learning from your discoveries. Your voices have joined the accumulated memory, and now they can be part of the larger song. The singers spend the remainder of your visit teaching you simple harmonies that allow you to participate in their music. It is unlike any singing you've done on the surface, requiring not just vocal skill, but a kind of attentive listening that incorporates the chamber's acoustic response as an essential element of the performance. As you add your voice to the deep songs, you experience yet another shift in perspective. The mountain ceases to be simply the environment where you happen to be trapped and becomes instead a living presence that you relearning to communicate with through music, movement, and the patient attention that each chamber has demanded. When it comes time to continue your journey toward the surface, the parting feels less like leaving and more like completing one movement of a larger composition. The deep singers provide guidance for the final portion of your route, but more importantly, they give you an understanding that your underground experience has been part of something larger than simple exploration or survival. The mountain will remember your songs. This tells you as you prepare to leave. And whenever you think of the deep places, the songs will remember you. As you enter the final passages that lead toward daylight, your voices carry melodies learned in the chamber of deep songs. The music transforms the approaching end of your underground journey from simple escape to graduation, from students who have learned to hear the mountainous voice to graduates who carry that knowledge back to the surface world. Chapter 7, The Door of Dawn. A passage leading away from the deep singers rises more steeply than any you've encountered, following what appears to be a natural chimney in the mountain's structure. Your group climbs steadily upward, guided by increasingly fresh air currents and the growing sense that you reapproaching significant change in your circumstances. But the anticipation of reaching the surface is tempered by a reluctance you wouldn't have expected when your journey began. Each step toward daylight feels like leaving behind not just the underground chambers, but a way of seeing and understanding that has fundamentally changed how you perceive both Moria and your own relationship to the world. I'm not ready for this to end, Thane admits as you pause to rest on a natural shelf in the ascending passage. Everything up there is going to seem ... He searches for the right word. Smaller, somehow. You understand exactly what he means. The surface world's concerns, productivity schedules, ore quotas, the practical demands of commercial mining feel less urgent now than they did just days ago. Your time in the mountain's deep places has revealed priorities and satisfactions that exist on entirely different scales. The twins, typically practical even in philosophical moments, have been discussing how the techniques you've observed might be applied to the restoration work in Moria's upper levels. The garden chamber's principles could revolutionize underground food production, Cully suggests, and the acoustic engineering in the singer's chamber could improve communication throughout the mine complex. But their enthusiasm for practical applications coexists with a deeper appreciation for the intrinsic value of what you've had discovered. Some things you've learned are meaningful precisely because they exist for their own sake, rather than for their utility to outside purposes. The passage continues to rise, and gradually you begin to notice changes that signal your approach to the surface world. The air carries scents that are subtly different from the deep chambers, hints of surface vegetation, the particular quality of sunlight-warmed stone, and the complex mixture of odors that characterize the interface between underground and surface environments. More significantly, you begin to encounter evidence that your underground journey has followed a known route, though perhaps not a commonly traveled one. The passage shows signs of occasional use-worn handholds carved into steep sections, small supply caches, tucked into protective alcoves and markers that suggest this route serves as an alternative entrance to Moria's depths for those who understand its significance. This isn't an emergency exit, Ori observes as he documents the passage's features. It's a pilgrimage route, a way for people to access the deep chambers when they re-ready for what those places offer. Balin nods with the satisfaction of understanding confirmed. The mountain has many secrets, he says. Not all of them are meant for everyone, but those who need to find them generally do. As you climb higher, the passage begins to show more dramatic evidence of its connection to the surface. Natural light, actual sunlight, begins to supplement your lamp illumination, filtering down through openings too distant to see clearly, but near enough to transform the quality of the air and the character of the space. The first glimpse of actual daylight comes as you round a curve in the passage and see, far above, an opening that frames a patch of blue sky. The sight is so startling after days of artificial illumination that you stop involuntarily, overwhelmed by the beauty of something as simple as natural light. But rather than rushing toward the opening, your group pauses to absorb the transition gradually. The underground journey has taught you the value of patient observation, and the approach to the surface deserves the same careful attention you've given to each new chamber. The final section of the passage opens into a cave entrance that overlooks a narrow valley you don't immediately recognize. The opening is partially concealed by vegetation and positioned in such a way that it would be nearly invisible to casual observation from below. Only someone who knew exactly where to look would be likely to discover this entrance to Moria's hidden depths. Stepping into natural daylight after your underground journey creates a complex mixture of emotions. Relief at reaching safety combines with genuine regret at leaving behind the chambers that have taught you so much. The surface world looks simultaneously familiar and strange, more vivid in some ways, but also somehow less concentrated in meaning than the spaces you've been exploring. The valley below reveals itself to be a secluded glen that lies perhaps half a day's walk from Moria's main entrances. A stream flows through its center, and the slopes are covered with the kind of mixed forest that creates perfect conditions for quiet contemplation. It's the sort of place that would naturally appeal to someone seeking solitude for reflection or creative work. Look, Feely says, pointing toward a structure that's barely visible through the trees near the stream. Following his gaze, you make out what appears to be a small dwelling, not a rough shelter, but a carefully built cottage that seems designed for long-term habitation by someone who values both solitude and beauty. Smoke rises from its chimney, indicating current occupancy. As you make your way down toward the cottage, you're re-met by its inhabitant, an elderly dwarf whose appearance and manner immediately remind you of the craftsman whose workshop you discovered in the deep chambers. The resemblance is so strong that you wonder if you're encountering the same individual, though that seems impossible given the apparent age of the workshop's contents. "Welcome, travelers," the dwarf says with a warm smile that suggests he's not surprised by your appearance. "I am Nali, guardian of the Hidden Way. I trust your journey through the deep places has been educational." The casual way he refers to your underground experience as educational rather than harrowing confirms what you've begun to suspect. Your apparent accident, the rockfall that trapped you in the lower chambers, was perhaps less accidental than it seemed. Or rather, it was the kind of accident that happens when people are ready for the experiences it makes possible. Nali invites you to rest and refresh yourselves at his cottage before making the final journey to Moria's main entrances. As you sit around his simple table, sharing a meal of bread and honey while recounting your discoveries, you realize that your underground journey has been both an ending and a beginning. The deep chambers choose their own visitors, Nali explains as you describe the garden, the workshop, and the singer's chamber. Not everyone who enters Moria's depths is ready to see what you've seen. But when someone is prepared for those teachings, the mountain finds a way to provide them. The conversation continues as afternoon fades toward evening, with Nali proving to be an ideal audience for your discoveries. His questions draw out details you hadn't consciously noticed, and his obvious familiarity with the deep chambers helps you understand how your individual experiences fit into a larger pattern of knowledge and wisdom. As the sun sets over the hidden valley, you realize that your time underground has given you something more valuable than an escape route. You've gained access to a way of seeing and understanding that will influence every future experience. The patience of stone, the persistence of water, the quiet satisfaction of work done for its own sake. These are lessons that apply far beyond Moria's chambers. When morning comes, you return to the surface world and resume your roles as miners and citizens of the restored dwarven realm. But you'll carry with you the memory of chambers, where beauty exists without audience, where meaningful work continues in isolation, and where the mountain itself serves as teacher for those ready to learn. The door of dawn has opened not just to natural light, but to understanding that transforms everything it touches. And as you settle into peaceful sleep in Nali's cottage, surrounded by the gentle sounds of the hidden valley, you realize that some journeys lead not just to new places, but to new ways of seeing the places you thought you already knew. Your time in the deep places of Moria has ended, but the songs you learned there will echo in your memory for years to come, reminding you that wonder and meaning can flourish in the most unexpected corners of the world. Until our paths cross again beneath the party tree. The Shire is always here, waiting to welcome you home.